Ridge Racer Revolution is so similar to its predecessor, Ridge Racer, that it's almost like an exact clone. I mean, it's not exactly a clone, but it's very similar. That's not a bad thing, though. I mean, if you're a sequel to a game that's really good, you're just bringing people more of what they loved in the original. I have no problem with that. I think my biggest problem with Ridge Racer Revolution is just how hard the game is. Just too difficult. It's like the Dark Souls of racing. I mean, it's a pretty simple concept. All racing simulation type games are simple concepts. You have these racetracks, which by the way are beautiful. You have a selection of different cars. You can customize whether you want to race automatic or stick. Each car has different specifications, like some cars can accelerate better, some cars have better maximum speed, better handling, better grip. And then once you decide what works best for this particular racetrack, you just go. Slow down on the turns, speed up when it's a nice long opening of you going forward, and try to pass your competition on the road. You have to make it to various checkpoints in the game. If you don't make it to a checkpoint before the allowed time, the game is over. But really, what you really have to do, especially when you're racing in the traditional racing type of stages, you have to finish first. You have to get ahead of all the other people. If you're beating the checkpoints but you're still in last place, who cares, right? The game is gruelingly difficult. I mean, you have to have like a perfect run to actually get into the top 3 in most of the races you will have. The difficulty, let me just set this straight, the difficulty is too hard for me. I mean, maybe some people who have mastered the specific controls and physics of this game, it'll be a lot easier for them. I guess you really have to maybe master the game to be really good at it, and then you can really enjoy it. The thing is, the game doesn't have realistic physics at all. So you're not mastering like physics and actual racing, you're only mastering the physics of this particular game. When you crash into a wall in Ridge Racer Revolution, it doesn't quite feel like you're crashing into a wall. It feels like you're crashing into like this force field, which is like a couple of inches thick and protecting the wall. Another thing is the actual crashes. They don't feel like actual car crashes. It's more like pinball. It's very stylistic. This is not realistic crash physics in the slightest. Also, you pretty much crash into everything. I mean, you just have this racetrack. If you drive off the racetrack, you will crash into whatever's to the side. Even if it's not a wall. Even if it's like a little mount of grass that's 4 inches off the ground, you're gonna crash into that like it's the Trump border wall. It makes no sense, but it does make sense when you look at when this game was released. In Japan, this came out in 1995. In America, in 1996. This is an old racing game, and that's kind of what's impressive about it. It's an old PS1 game, fairly old, and it's 3D, and it looks amazing. I think that's probably the best thing about Ridge Racer Revolution, is how good the game looks from when it came out. A game that was first released in Japan in 1995, looking this good, I mean, forget about the good music, forget about the fact that the car models look good, the graphics look amazing. Just little details like the lighting in the game. There's actual lighting changes in a game from 1995 and 1996. I remember World of Warcraft back in like 2008 or something like that. They added dynamic lighting where the lighting was really improved in the game, and it was a whole big to-do. It was a big patch update that took months to create. And this game had advanced lighting for its time right from the beginning, from the vanilla version. Well, I guess it's not like you can get a patch update for a PS1 game. You just have to buy a whole new game disc. At the end of the day, Ridge Racer Revolution is a really hard, gruelingly difficult game with very arcadey controls and physics, not realistic at all, but it does look great. If you're like really good at racing, or if you want a real challenge, this is the game for you. If you're more of a casual like myself, I would just pass this up. You're not going to get far in this game. Also, it has a pretty cool loading screen. It's like this, a little Atari 26 billion game. That's kind of cool. But Stan, good sir, how does it compare to other racing games you have reviewed in the past? Well, okay. I mean, I reviewed like a billion racing games, but let's just take a few. Let's take The Duel Test Drive 2, a game I reviewed about 3 years ago. Um, that game was on the Sega Genesis, but it has amazing graphics. A really cool first-person view that game had, and the racing was a lot easier. And of course, the actual graphics and the racing wasn't as impressive just because it was a 16-bit game. This is a 32-bit game. So I think that one though is a little bit better, just for what system it was on, and the fact that the racing was a little bit easier for me. It was just a game that I could play for longer versus this one, which I can only play for any extended amount of time if I'm really good at racing. Now, let's take oh, hey, let's not go far. Let's take a game I reviewed a couple days ago, Road Rash 3D. I mean, it's not even a contest. Road Rash 3D is one of the best racing games of all time. You race motorcycles. What can be cooler than racing motorcycles? This game does not even compare. I mean, I guess the only group of people who would like this game more than Road Rash 3D is, again, people that are gluttons for punishment or want something really difficult. Because Road Rash 3D wasn't difficult. Road Rash 3D was just the right amount of difficulty, but it wasn't crazy difficult. But yeah, it's not even the contest. Let's take maybe a game again from the same era, Virtua Racing Deluxe for the Sega 32X, a game I reviewed about 3 years ago. Um, Obviously, a Sega 32X game is going to have graphics a little worse than the PS1 game, which kind of it doesn't make sense because they're both 32-bit consoles. It's like keep up, Sega 32X, but them's the rules of the road. That's how it rolls. I mean, it just because you were released in the same time frame, the same period, doesn't mean your game console is going to stack up. I mean, the Wii is not the Xbox 360. So that game, again, graphics not even close to this. Very rudimentary graphics, but that game was a little bit better just because the racing was more manageable for basic bitch scrubs like myself who can't handle a real man's racing game, who are such pathetic losers that we cannot actually race in a hard racing simulation. We can't handle it. And let's take Hard Driving for the Sega Genesis. Well, if you never watched my review of that game, I would recommend it. That's like probably the worst racing game I ever played in my life. Now, that's not even the contest. Hard Driving, while released roughly in the same time period as this game, doesn't hold a candle to this game. It was a game that was released in the Sega Genesis, and they tried to make it like 3D, but it failed horribly, and it had horrible physics, horrible controls, horrible everything. If you think I was mean to this game, if I wasn't fair talking about this game's negative aspects, watch that review. That I ripped that game apart. Not even close. Ridge Racer beats Hard Driving by a mile and a half. Okay, last comparison. I swear, pinky swear. 007 Racing, a game for the PS1 I reviewed a couple years ago, whatever. First of all, 007 Racing was a game that was racing in name only. It's really more of a car combat game with missions. It's like Twisted Metal, but instead of just random carnage, you're supposed to perform various 007 type missions in your car, like saving people, defusing bombs, running bad guys over, shooting bad guys, ramming into bad guys' cars, that sort of thing. But you still drove around, and sometimes I guess the maps looked like racetracks. The graphics in this game and 007 Racing are more or less the same. The only difference is this is a game that was first developed in 95 in Japan. That game is like from the year 2000. There's a 5 year difference. And really, if I look at it objectively, this game might even have slightly better graphics. So it's not even a contest. This game is 5 years older and still has better graphics. Now, in terms of the racing physics, that's very important. 007 Racing handled a lot better than this game. It was a lot easier to handle anyway. And I don't know if it was because you didn't really have to race. You could drive at a moderately slower pace than like a 150 miles per hour nonstop throughout the entire level. So maybe you could handle better just because you could keep a moderate, relaxing pace once in a while. But I guess we're talking about for the type of game it is. So it handled better for the type of game it was. So overall, I think 007 Racing was slightly better, even despite the fact that it was worse in a few aspects. And that's it. No more comparing this game to other racing and driving games, I swear. So yeah, very difficult game. I would recommend it for fans of really difficult racing games or just gluttons for punishment. Everyone else, skip. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more classic game reviews. Goodbye, my friends.